One-on-one with Allen. Drives. Kicks it out, Anthony. Anthony for three. Bang!
See that dude that just made the shot? A year ago, that guy thought that he was going to retire from the NBA, and now he's got a chance to make some noise in the playoffs. But how did he get to this moment? Let's rewind. The only thing that held Carmelo Anthony back from being an NBA player was his ACT score. In his junior year in high school, he committed to Syracuse because they knew how big time of a player he was. In an Adidas big time tournament in Vegas in his senior year, Melo led his team to the Final Four, where he attracted the likes of Amari Stoudemire and a very young LeBron James. But it didn't matter unless he could get that 19 on the ACT, which he finally did in late April right before college. Melo played a season at Syracuse where he won an NCAA title, averaging 22.2 points, and was drafted 3rd overall by the Nuggets in 2003. He was immediately the first option and blossomed into a superstar. He later requested a trade to the Knicks, where he was still the first option, and the Knicks became more relevant, mostly in 2013 when they went 54-28. During those years, Melo was a 10-time NBA All-Star, 2-time All-NBA Second Team, 4-time All-NBA Third Team honors, and a 2013 NBA Scoring Champion. He was known as an isolation-heavy scorer who could get to anywhere on the floor and get the team a bucket whenever they needed one. He always had the spotlight and was always the first option, until he wasn't anymore. And boy was he in for a rude awakening. Many fans had pushed the Knicks to get rid of Carmelo because he didn't fit their timeline and many contenders could have used someone like him. The Oklahoma City Thunder were one of those teams. After KD left in 2016, the Thunder needed help for Russell Westbrook, and they did just that by acquiring Paul George and Melo to become as known the OK3. One of the bigger issues was that Melo felt that he was a star, which made him struggle embracing the role that teams had for him. When Melo was asked about the possibility of coming off the bench, he said this.
And the second question is...
Who, me?
Oh. I guess that answers that part.
I mean, I don't know where that started, where that came from. Hey, P, they said I got to come off the bench.
Although the Thunder were hyped up as championship contenders and legit challengers to Golden State, they did not surpass expectations, as Melo struggled to be the catch-and-shoot shooter alongside Paul George and Russ. It got so bad to the point where in Game 5 of the first round, the Jazz were up 25, and Billy Donovan benched Melo in favor of Jeremy Grant, which helped the Thunder rally back. And this marked the end of Melo's stint in OKC, and he got traded to the Hawks in the following offseason. Now, after the 2017-2018 season, the Houston Rockets had signed CP3 to a max contract, which made re-signing Trevor Ariza too difficult. And as a result, they had a vacant spot at small forward, which gave Melo another opportunity. He was signed for the vet minimum for $2.4 million. However, that stint lasted shorter, as he continued to struggle being the catch-and-shoot shooter the Rockets had hoped he would be, and was just plain bad on the defensive end. During his stint in Houston, Melo called Daryl Morey to ask how he could help the team. Morey had the same idea in wanting to meet with Melo, but for different reasons. Melo was in his hotel room in San Antonio when Morey came in and told him sternly, "Look, your services are no longer needed." Melo asked why he was getting cut, and Morey told him it just wasn't working out. This crushed Melo, and the lack of transparency made him feel that it was deeper than basketball. That night, he called his close friend CP3 into his hotel room to have a heart-to-heart conversation. He asked if Paul was part of him getting forced out, and Paul told him no. At that moment, he realized this was it. But what made him emotionally vulnerable was that he couldn't do anything about it. And to make matters worse, the media crushed him, saying that he was selfish for his unwillingness to come off the bench, a locker room enigma, and that it was time for him to hang it up, due to his inability to adapt to the analytical revolution. Now, Melo did struggle. He shot 32% from 3, and with his bad defense, the Rockets decided that Melo wasn't it. They went 4-7 with him before deciding to start Gary Clark in place of him. And just for some context, usually 10 games is the sample size teams use to evaluate players, and so they decided that this was the time to cut him. But Melo felt misunderstood, and he was tired of it. Therefore, he started contemplating if retirement was finally the move. He was at the rock bottom of his career, because for the first time, the game didn't love him back, and the politics of the NBA just made it worse. Right after he got released, Melo joined 20 executives from the finance, tech, and entertainment fields, which he wanted to join after his career was over. But he wanted one more chance to do what he loved most, play basketball. During this gap year, Melo was at an internal conflict with himself. Was it his fault that he was out? That he didn't belong anymore in the game that brought him so much joy? He continuously battled with himself, and he realized he just needed a mental break from everything. So he turned to walks. Now this wasn't something new to him. When Melo couldn't sleep or was just thinking too much, he would walk around New York City as late as 2 a.m. And during the lowest point of his career, he did it again and again to clear his mind and be in his own personal space. But this wasn't enough. As the time passed and teams continuously passed up on him, he truly felt it was time and started accepting retirement as a reality. In early March 2019, Melo's longtime physical therapist, Fabrice Gauthier, saw doubt creeping on his face, and Melo said, "I can't do this anymore." His love for the game started fading away because there wasn't a direction for him. What system did he need to adapt to? What shots was he going to take in the game? Where does he need to be on the court? Melo described this feeling himself, quote, "When you're just getting up in the morning and have to force yourself to go to the gym, I don't think people understand how hard that is and how difficult that is." But his loved ones kept pushing him, saying that it wasn't his fault, and "we're not going to let you give up." Then he started pushing himself. He trained in New York and LA and focused on getting lean and more agile. Even though teams like the Nets and Knicks continued to pass him up, his training paid off. One day in the summer, CJ McCollum was training with Melo when he noticed how Melo was dominating against younger players and thought he could still play. He went back to Blazers GM Neil Oshley and told him about Melo. Oshley kept a mental note of Melo in his mind. And now let's fast forward to the beginning of the 2019-20 NBA season. This wasn't the first time the Blazers kept an eye on Melo. Lillard and CJ had wanted Melo in a trade 2 years ago, and the Blazers made many attempts at signing him in the past. After a trip to the Western Conference Finals, the Blazers were struggling out of the gates at 5-9. They had lost both of their starting forwards Aminu and Mo Harkless to other teams. Yusuf Nurkic and Zach Collins were dealing with long-term injuries. The Blazers needed someone who could be a spark in the locker room and someone who could just make shots. With their season starting off slow, the Blazers decided to give Melo a chance because they knew they could provide him what he had been coveting for 3 years, a defined role and respect from the best players. In November 2019, Melo got his chance on a non-guaranteed deal for $2.4 million. With an extensive physical and mental break from the game, Melo wanted to make the most of his opportunities and knew he needed to change his mindset. When he got to Portland, he told CJ and Dame, "Let me fit in with you guys," and he would figure out the rest. Again, Melo was expected to make shots from Lillard and McCollum passes, but the Blazers knew Melo had been put in a box in his stints in OKC and Houston. Melo was told what he had been needing to hear for 3 years: just play your game. The Blazers trusted him, and even though he didn't get off to a hot start, they trusted that he would figure it out. But more importantly, the Blazers wanted Melo to feel welcome again, and let him know they needed him for the team to succeed. McCollum sits next to Melo in the locker room, and Lillard sits on bus rides with him. After Melo's 5th game, Lillard invited him to Thanksgiving dinner with his family because he felt that Melo was treated unfairly and wanted the Blazers organization to embrace Anthony. With the camaraderie and relationships forming, Melo felt that he could play free again, and even won Western Conference Player of the Week, an award that he had not received since 2014. The Blazers kept winning, and even though Lillard did a lot of the heavy lifting, there is no doubt that without Melo, the Blazers are sitting at home watching the Suns and Grizzlies battle it out. Even if the Blazers weren't winning games, Melo knew that ultimately he wanted to end his career in Portland, and it's for one reason only. For the first time in years, Melo felt something that we all want in life. He was wanted again, and the rest of what he loved for the last 20 plus years came along with the ride. So hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Please like and subscribe if you want more consistent NBA content. Besides that, peace out.